Sorry, I forgot all about doing that. So, what'd y'all learn this week?
Well, we've been talking about Balak and Balaam,
Mm-hmm.
and how Balak was an ungodly king,
Yes, he was.
and Balaam, he wanted Balak to curse the Israelites.
The other way around, but yeah.
Oh, do I have?
Balak asked Balaam to curse the
Thank you.
Israelites. Yes.
I knew I wasn't saying that right. Anyway, I'm glad you can understand that. So, anyway, God just didn't do it, and you
Right.
know, I'm proud that Balaam didn't go against God's word.
Yeah.
And he stood strong, even though it would be hard if people offered you all kinds of money
Right.
and praises and whatever you want. It would be hard to say, oh, no, I can't do that. But it just goes to show you God can use all kinds of people.
Yes. Even Balaam, who is probably, I mean, I've heard people say that they thought he was really a prophet of God. A lot of people think that he was not because of the divination and different things that he did, and even after the second time, or before the second time, after the second one, it says that he didn't practice his divination when he gave this next response from God. I mean, he very well could have been like Job, a believer outside of the children of Israel. He could also have been a very, how would you say, a heathen, basically, and that he used divination and things that way to do things. I've heard that it could have been, getting his answers, his what do you call it? All of the things he said could have been coming from demons even. And it could have been when he was looking, he said, God, I can only do what God tells me to do. He may have been thinking of his God, not Jehovah. But he does use the name Jehovah at some point too, so.
He used it several times.
Yeah.
Jehovah.
Right.
Capital letter Lord, and
Yeah.
it says Jehovah talked to him.
Yeah. I mean, I believe God told him, this is what you're going to say, but what I've read, other people that said he might have been thinking this other way, or doing these other things. And he was, even after he praised or blessed the children of Israel 3 times, and then went through and talked about all of these other nations that that God was going to deliver into their hands. He still went back and got Balaam, told Balak how to go about destroying the children of Israel by having the women come in and lead them astray. And we don't read that in Numbers. We read I think that's in the New Testament, when he's talking about that Balaam was the one that told him, this is how you can destroy them, is you get them to turn away from God. Which they did. I mean, that was something that they did right then, right after the blessing. That next chapter talks about them turning away from God and following other gods and worshiping other gods because of the women, the Moabite women. And that we find out later, was all from Balaam's suggestions. So whether he was a real prophet of God, I don't know. I mean, I've heard both ways. It's just one of those things we don't know down here. Maybe someday. Of course, when we get to heaven, we may not care anymore about things like that. So. Too many other things going on.
What kind of stood out to me this week, and the purification
Mm-hmm.
of the priest that, of anybody that touched a dead body.
Right?
And I thought, well, you know, those priests handle those dead animals.
Right.
All the time. But what came out to me this time was that they had to cleanse themselves every time they made an offering.
Yeah.
So they had to go through purification.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff that maybe we don't realize today, because we're not going through it now. We don't have to. So,
I'm thankful for that.
yes, yes, me too.
Something I thought about, I don't think it was this last week, but listening to the wind last night,
Yeah,
I thought of when the Israelites were complaining because they didn't have the meat, and God caused a great wind to bring all the quail and piled it up around the camp, and it just made it a lot more real.
yeah. And especially when you were just talking yesterday about what do the ducks do out there?
We
Ducks and the
had
geese,
behind
because
the house, and I'm like, what do the ducks and the geese do?
it's windy like that, they can't fly. So. Of course, the ducks, I'm not sure that they do. They hardly ever fly around our house. You know, they're at the pond, we throw out food, and they waddle up there as fast as they can. I'm thinking, you know, it'd be a lot faster just to, you know, jump up in the air and come. But they don't do that. A few do.
Depends on how hungry they are.
Yes. Oh, they run as fast as they can, right? There was something about that, the cleansing part that just really jumped out to me this week. And I didn't write it down, and now I can't remember what it was. I thought, oh, I'll remember that. Yeah, I don't remember it.
I always think, you know, I don't know that I'm right, but I always think they've got light clothing on, you know, white to
Mhm.
light. And I'm like, that's a lot of blood to get
Yes.
out of white clothes all, you know, that's a constant cleaning thing. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, when they put on those to take the blood into the tabernacle and stuff that way, especially the high priest, but even the others, they sprinkle blood on some of them for different things, and yeah.
When I'm reading that, I'm always thinking, oh, what a mess. What a mess. It might have been interesting to see, you know, just how it was done, but I'm not sure that I'd want to do it.
Want to go through it?
always. Of course, I wouldn't have been chosen anyway, because I was a woman, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just, it's amazing to me, just all that they did do and how they did it, and it's just, I'm just so thankful to be born afterwards.
Right. Yes. Not only technology that we have today, but just not having to go through all of that. Of course,
Thank
if we
goodness for
were,
washing machines.
yes, if we were not born a Jew back then that could have been even a worse problem, right?
Yeah, yes.
And one of the things I do, it gets me every year thinking about it when we read about the bronze snake and how, you know, it is a simple thing, but it took a lot of faith. I mean, they got bit by a snake, and God said, all you have to do is turn and you look at this snake and you'll survive. It's a very simple thing, but it is an act of faith, because how many of us would want to take and, you know, put a tourniquet around it, try to get all the poison out, all that kind of stuff, instead of just turning and looking at the snake? Of course, it did become a snare to them later. They began to worship the snake instead of worshiping God. Which also, you know, kind of, I guess it gets to us some too, that we a lot of times I think we look down upon the Israelites and them so quickly turning away from God, but we do the same kinds of things. You know, we're just as bad as they are. Just have to.
You know, speaking of the snake on the pole, you know, they still use that today in medicine.
Mhm.
That is their symbol. But so many people that aren't Christians say, well, the Bible is just fairy tales. But notice how many things in society
Yeah.
that we still do and we still, you know, can revert back to the Bible and say, well, that's a biblical thing, you know, that they're unaware of, I guess. When they say it's not relevant, it still is
Oh,
relevant.
it is relevant, yeah, definitely relevant. I wish I could remember what that was. I was looking back here to see if I saw something stick out to me, but maybe I'll go back and look at it this next week and
And write it down.
write it down. Anything else?
You know, one thing I did have a thought on when they go through all of the tribes of Israel, you know, and they do name a lot of the lineage.
Right?
It really just was so boring as a kid, you know, having to read through all that. But now the older I get, I realize that that is going to be important someday when they do go back to the land and know what's what.
Right.
You know, because they'll have it written down. They know, of course,
Yeah.
God knows anyway, but I'm just saying, you know, it will be relevant, even though
Right.
it doesn't seem relevant right now.
This is beside the point, but when I was getting stuff ready for Sunday, and I was thinking about how, I really didn't go back and look at it, but I read that, you know, when they destroyed the temple, they lost all of those records, so they don't really know. And I got to thinking, they have DNA now. They could probably, and that may be why it's waited till this point for them to start doing stuff to get ready for the tabernacle, to build it, because now with DNA testing, they can, you know, figure out those close relatives and stuff that way, and can possibly figure out who was who. By the way, they also said the last name of Cohen comes from Kohathite, which is a Levitical name. You know, the Kohathites were part of the Levites, so I didn't share that Sunday either. But
That's interesting.
there was a lot of stuff that I could have got into, but I didn't want to keep y'all here for 3 or 4 hours last Sunday. So.
It is fascinating, though.
Yes, it is. Anything else? Well, I wanted to share this with you all several weeks ago, and then we had bad weather, and so this is just some pictures. I got off the internet, most of them, well, I guess all of them, of the tabernacle in the wilderness. Okay, now there's one that's not. It's from the temple, but I like the look of it, so I did that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Just remember, God led them with a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud. That's supposedly the pillar of fire at night. And we talked about that a few weeks ago, about how he gave them warmth, he gave them light so they could see. And I didn't really say it, but it also kept the wild animals away from them, because they're not going to come next to a flame. But you can see where, in this picture, they show all of the Israelites camped out around the tabernacle and the, yeah.
Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, but I was thinking of the fence thing, whatever they called it, from the holy place and the holy of holies and all that stuff. Okay, go on. And this is just another picture of it. So this, the fenced area, and I forgot what they call it, the fence. There's a different word other than fence, but that is to separate everybody else from the holy place, or the holiness of the sanctuary, or the tabernacle. And you'll notice on this end, there's a gate, there's an opening. There's only one way in. You can't get in it from any other place. And the curtains along the outside were about 9 foot high, 9 to 10 foot high, so they were tall enough you couldn't see over it either. And that was all designed. The Levites and the priests could go in there, and you have two things on the outside, and then the rest of the stuff is inside the tabernacle. Okay? So this is kind of a cutout, so you can kind of see a little bit. I wish I had maybe I can reach, because I don't think it would work here anyway. But this is the brazen altar, the bronze altar, where they offered the sacrifices. And then you have the bronze laver, which was filled with rainwater, and that's where they washed and did all of that stuff. And then they would go inside the tabernacle. The first part of the tabernacle, where the guy's standing by the little table, that's the holy place. Levites would go in there and do different things, but you have the menorah and the table of showbread and the altar of incense. And then where the curtain is that has the angels on it, inside it is the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was. And, this shows a sheep. Can't see what it is back there. Okay. Oh, this is the altar. Now, the altar at the temple was much, much larger. And they even had, if I remember right, there's steps going up to it, but I know it was much larger. But remember, they had to carry this everywhere. The curtains and the poles and all of that stuff, they had carts for. But when it came to the things inside the tabernacle, they all had to be carried. So you see the poles there? So it couldn't be too big, or you wouldn't be able to carry it. And so they would carry it around. They would start the fire. It had a grating on it. They would put the sacrifices on there and offer the sacrifices to God. And a lot of the other things around there, the shovel, the little hooks to get the things in and out, all of that stuff God designed. He told them what to do. And when we read through that in Exodus and Leviticus, it tells, it's very specific in how all of that stuff is made. Okay? So just another picture. That was more of a model. But you notice this guy, he's bringing a lamb who's been slain. They collected his blood, and he's bringing it to the altar. Okay? Then you have the bronze laver. I told you it was filled with rainwater. I guess they could have carried water. Maybe not rainwater. It was probably carried water because they were in the desert. But they'd fill it with water. They would wash the different parts that they were sacrificing. They would wash their hands. They would do all of that stuff at the laver. Shows him washing his hands. And remember, these are outside the tabernacle, so they're bronze. The closer you get to the Holy of Holies, it turns to gold. So everything out here is all bronze. Okay? This is the one that's a picture of the one from the Temple of Solomon. It says that it was built on the backs of 12 cows, oxen. And it was so big, had so much bronze building it, that they couldn't weigh it, they couldn't measure it. And when the Babylonians came in and took over, they basically broke it into pieces, tore it to pieces somehow, and carried it off. But it was huge. I don't know how they'd ever get up there to wash their hands and do all of that stuff, but I guess they did somehow. And those cows may not be life-size, but in my mind, they're still very, very, very large. Okay? This is one of the things that I mentioned to Gene, I know. I don't know whether I told you all about it, but it's one of those things I had never thought about. But when they put up the tabernacle, they'd have one layer was linen, the goat's hair. And by the way, it's a goat that comes from a certain area in there, Jordan area, and they were black. So it had the black coat, which represents sin. Then you had the red that was dyed from rams, which is showing the blood covering the sin. And then you had the badger skins, which was brown on the outside. But you think about, there's those 4 layers of stuff over it. So what is allowing them to see? Well, they have the menorah, which we'll get to in a second. Go ahead. I don't know whether there's the next one. So this is another cutout. This shows the holy place is to the right and the Holy of Holies on the left. Okay? The table of showbread. They had 12 loaves. They were called thick loaves. Now, when we've done, or when I've done the Passover, we use, what's it called?
Matzah.
Matzah. And it's real thin. It's kind of like a cracker. These would still have no yeast in them, but they were a lot thicker. And they had 2 stacks, 6 on each stack, 1 for each of the 12 tribes. And they traded that out. I don't remember whether it's every day or every week. I don't remember that part, but I know they traded it out. And it also has wine of libation that's right there and some other things. But this was the stuff that, if you remember, we'll get to it later, but when David and his group were hungry and they went to the temple, and the priest that was there gave him the showbread. And it was not legal for him, to David and them, to eat. It was only for the Levites and the priests. But God was also later talking about how, man was not made for the Sabbath, but whichever way. Anyway, the fact that it's okay. People are more important than the showiness of the bread and things that way. Okay? I think I've got a couple of pictures of that. Again, they had to carry the table, so it had to have the rods going through it that they could pick it up and carry it wherever they needed to go. And they'd have different ones. I always wondered about that, because these were probably fairly heavy. Did they just have 1 at each end, or they had 2 at each end? And if they walked for 30 minutes or whatever, and then trade out, or how they did that, I don't know. Just one of those things that I'm always curious about, those little details. That's just me. Okay? And then the menorah. Now, I don't know whether you've ever seen, there's actually 2 different menorahs, okay? This one has a total of 7 lamps, 3 on each side and then the one in the middle. That's what was used in the temple, okay? That's what was used during Passover. That's what, a lot of things like that, that's the menorah they used. Hanukkah menorah is different. It has 4 on each side and 1 in the middle, because there's 8 days of Hanukkah, so they light one each day. The middle one, I think it might be lit all the time. It might, I haven't, it's been a while, like I said, since I've really looked at that. But if you ever want a menorah, you need to make sure you count and see which one you want. Whether you want the one for Hanukkah, or if you want the one for Passover, or other things. Okay? This is about the size of the original one, and the one that they have built. And I showed you a picture of it last Sunday that they have prepared for the third temple. It's about that high. Now, inside the holy place, remember all those coverings? That's the only light, is the menorah. And they had to keep it burning all the time. So anytime it was set up, and I don't know why they have the Ark of the Covenant showing, because it shouldn't be, it should be blocked off. But they would keep that going all the time. And they had to have a special, very purified olive oil that they used in it to light it. Okay? And again, another one. This is the altar of incense. And it's set right in front of the curtain going into the Holy of Holies. And that was where they would take the coals from the burnt offering, altar of burnt offering. They would bring those coals in, they would put it in here, and then they would pour incense on it. And the incense represented the prayers of the saints, prayers of the people of God. And the prayers would go up to God. And they did this on a regular basis as well. But it was right by the entrance into God's presence. That's where they needed it to be, was They were offering their prayers to God, and his presence was inside the Holy of Holies, in behind that curtain. Okay? And I think I have several of those pictures as well. And then you had the curtain itself that separated, and it says it was decorated with the cherubim, the angels. If they look like this, I don't know. It's kind of funny. I've seen, I don't know, a whole bunch of different pictures, and almost every one of them, they look a little different. So, but it does talk about having red and blue and white mixed with gold, and then the angels in it. So, but that's the curtain that split in two from top to bottom when God opened up the way for us to go directly to him through the death of Jesus instead of having to go through a priest. Okay? And here's the priest at that time offering incense, offering the prayers in front of the curtain. Again, it's really hard to see on this one, but that is an angel in the pattern there. Yours probably looks better than mine back there. Okay? The breastplate and the stuff that the priest wore. He had, I forgot, there's a term for the little wrapping thing he had, but he had a crown. The high priest had a crown. He had bronze things on his shoulders that had things representing the 12 tribes. The ephod that he had different stones, 12 different stones that represented the 12 tribes. They were over his heart all the time. You'll notice he has on a white robe underneath, blue robe on top of that, and the blue robe at the bottom of it has the little pomegranates and the bells. That's what would ring when he was moving around, and they would know that he was still alive as long as they could hear. And when he would go in there, they would tie a rope around his leg, around his foot, and then if he ever stopped moving, because they were terrified that something would happen to the priest, that he would have sin in his life or something, and God would kill him for going into his presence. And then they could just pull him out, because nobody else could go in there. And so they just pull him out of there. I don't think it ever happened. Never. I mean, I haven't ever heard of any instance that it did. So, okay.
Except for those two guys that,
Yes.
they didn't get in there.
They didn't get in there. Abiathar and Nadab and Abihu. That's it. Yeah. And then the Ark of the Covenant. And Bob, I asked him to try to get one and bring it. But he said at Crossings, at the church, not at the school, but at the church, he was in there doing something one day in one of their storage rooms that somebody had built in the Ark of the Covenant. He said he was looking and going, oh, wow, that's kind of neat. And he looked up and there's another one up here. So I said, well, bring one of them, just set it up here and we'll get to see it. So, Bob, that's your job. You remember what I'm talking about? Or do you hear me?
Oh, I just looked up there.
Yes?
I know where there's two of them.
Yep, that's what I just told him. Not the original one. Okay? But it is kind of neat to see, kind of get in your mind what it may have looked like. Of course, if you watch Indiana Jones, you know what it looked like, right? Yeah. Okay? There's another picture. And there they are carrying it. And this just shows 4 people. Like I said, I always wondered if they had it here up on the shoulders. That shows, and the one in front of him playing the shofar as they walk along. Okay? Now, when they camped, if you will look at the numbers, at the bottom to the left here, the bottom kind of going to the left, you have Zebulun, Issachar, and Judah. Judah's tribe was larger than all of them, so it stuck out further. The ones, Gad, Simeon, and Reuben on the left, and Dan, Asher, and Naphtali on the right, if you look at the numbers, they all come out almost exactly the same. And then the ones at the top of the picture, Benjamin, Manasseh, and Ephraim, are the smallest, and it's actually, I don't remember the numbers, I want to say it's like 150 and 100 and 200 or 250, anyway, whatever numbers they were, thousands.
Makes a cross.
But it does make a cross. And the bottom of it, Judah and all of them, they're to the east. So if you were at the east looking out at it, you would see the cross. And then the tabernacle and everything there in the middle, and you see the pillar of cloud above it. And then who's around the little things that are around there, the three groups? The Levites.
Oh,
There's the three, the Merari, Kohathites, and starts with a G. Gergesites? I don't remember. Anyway. Gershom, yeah, that's Gershom, Merari, and Kohath. Anyway, those are the three tribes around it. And then possibly the priest out here in front of it. Okay? I don't know if that's the last picture or not. That is? All right. So I wanted you all to see that. I did a thing. I got it from Gene, who got it from another Gene, right?
No, from a Frank.
Frank? Okay. It wasn't the other Gene. I remember another Gene that you
Well,
knew.
there's Gene Jorgensen, but
Yeah.
he didn't do the tabernacle.
Okay. He has a book on the tabernacle in the wilderness, and I taught through that book. It's been, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago now, at least. But these are some of the pictures I used back then, but I changed them up too. Questions? Comments?
Well, Frank, when he did the tabernacle, and he was offering the incense,
Mm-hmm.
he let the smoke come up and he would wave it over
Yeah,
to
into the curtain.
Holy of Holies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he had all of the
They
little
were,
things that
they were
laid out.
made out of pasteboard,
Yeah.
but, you know, he could tear them down and set them up, but they were, except for the curtain, they were to scale.
Yeah.
I mean, they were actually the same size that is mentioned in the Bible.
Okay. Yeah.
It was very interesting.
Interesting. Yep. All right. Well, let's stand and sing our dismissal chorus and go to choir. In that order.